Well, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to our November webinar, Lunch and Learn webinar. If you're watching live on Zoom, thank you for joining us live, and I hope you get some value from today's session. If you're watching on YouTube as a catch-up, well, welcome to you too. So just a little plug about YouTube. Please check out our library of previous Lunch and Learn webinars. There's lots of useful and helpful information on there. And while you're there, if you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button while you're watching the videos, that tells YouTube that this content will help other people as well. So my name is Paul Stanier, as you can see below, from PS Tech. As a company, we help small businesses around the UK with their IT and their cyber security. Now, over the next 25 to 30 minutes today, we'll be learning how to take notes like a pro with Microsoft OneNote. So the format for today, we're going to have a quick presentation, first of all, by me on what Microsoft OneNote is. Then we're going to jump into a live demonstration and look at some of the basic functions and navigation of OneNote, and then into some of the more advanced functions that really helps you with productivity and efficiency, and also collaboration with your team. So what is Microsoft OneNote? Microsoft OneNote is a digital note-taking app, and you can use it on any device. Your notes that you take in the app are stored in an online account, which means they're safe and they are synchronized across your different devices. You can share those notes and collaborate on them with others as well. Now, Microsoft OneNote has been around for a long time. It's probably the app you never knew you had. It's been installed with Microsoft Office since the 2003 edition of Microsoft Office, and it has improved a lot in the last 21 years. Now, there are different flavors of Microsoft OneNote. There's a free version that comes with a personal Microsoft account. Now, Microsoft accounts are either free. You can go to account.microsoft.com, set up an account there, get an outlook.com or live.com email address, and you can get Microsoft OneNote as part of that free subscription. If you're subscribing to Microsoft 365 Personal or Family for the software and OneDrive, well, OneNote's included with that as well. But there's also a paid version in the form of the business version as well, with Microsoft 365 Business and Enterprise subscriptions. Now, with the free version, you cannot save what's called local copies of your OneNote notebooks. But with the pay-for versions, you have the ability to take those notebooks offline if you want some level of security around them. But online is technically more secure. So are there alternatives to Microsoft OneNote? Well, yes, there's loads really. You could use pretty much any app to take notes, even the free notepad that's built into Microsoft Windows. But for real good functionality, sorting, searching, filing, highlighting, and more, you want a dedicated app for your note-taking. So there are many dedicated apps out there that are alternatives to OneNote. For example, Evernote has been around for a long time. And also Notion is very popular as well. If you're using a mobile device to take your notes, well, if you use Android, there's Google Keep. And if you use Apple, there's Apple Notes. And Google and Apple store those notes in your cloud account, so it's accessible and portable across your devices. You can also use Microsoft Loop. But Loop is not really intended to be a notebook as such, but it can be used for sharing notes. So the question is, why would you use OneNote over these alternatives? Well, simply, firstly, for most of the audience here today, it's part of your Microsoft 365 subscription, or it's part of your personal or free paid account with Microsoft. It is a great tool. You'll come to see that in a moment. It works on Windows and on Mac. It works on Android and it works on Apple devices. It works in the web and it synchronizes across all your different devices. So let's jump into a live demonstration, have a look at what OneNote actually looks like, how we get started with it, and start taking notes. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, that looks good. So hopefully you can see my Windows 11 desktop here. How do we find Microsoft OneNote? Well, let's start with the Windows Start menu. So I'm going to click on the Start button here. And if we click on All Apps and scroll down to O for OneNote, you could also use the search or press the O button on your keyboard. If you've got Microsoft Office installed, you'll see OneNote is installed as an application here. So the first thing you need to do is right click on that. I strongly recommend you pin it to start, and you right click again and you click more and you pin it to your taskbar. Okay, so it's always available to you quickly if you want to capture some notes. We'll launch the app in a moment so you can see that. If you're working in the web, then you can access OneNote using your browser. So if I open up my Microsoft Edge browser here, I've set my homepage to office.com, but you can go to office.com yourself and sign in. And when you click on the little app picker here in the top left corner, then one of the applications you'll see is OneNote. If you can't see it, there is a search option here to find that. And if I type in OneNote, there we go. Okay, so that's one way you can get it. You can download the app as well from the App Store on your Android phone or your Apple phone or tablet as well. Let's minimize the web version, and I'm going to open up the Windows version of the app, which is where we're going to spend most of our time this afternoon. So this is Microsoft OneNote launching here. We get the usual nags from Microsoft because we haven't used it before. Okay, so let's have a look here. This is the concept of what Microsoft OneNote looks like. So basically, you create notebooks. So if you're using Microsoft 365 Business or Enterprise, the first time you open it, it will create a notebook called your name at your company name. So this is the notebook. Underneath your notebook, you have sections. So a section is created automatically here for you called Quick Notes. And you can create new sections with the New Section button. So if you imagine it's like a drawer, a filing drawer, these sections are like the little folders, the crystal files that you used to put into a folder system. And then just to the right here, you've also got pages. So we have notebooks, and within the notebook are a section, and within each section you can have pages. Now, each of these sections can be renamed. So if I don't want it called Quick Notes, for example, I can right-click on my section and choose Rename. Let's call this John's Notes and press Enter. So we've renamed the section as quickly as that. Now you notice the page here is called Untitled Page. The first page you create, or every page you add, is always called Untitled Page. So on the right-hand side here, which is the area where we're going to put our notes, let's give the page a title here. So I'm just going to call this my test page. And you'll see that the moment I type that, I get a date and timestamp, and my page is now named. Now you can rename the page however you want. And if I just adjust that straight away, that changes like so. You can rename pages and sections as many times as you want. You can also, when you create sections, you can color code the sections. So you'll see here that OneNote is picking random colors when I click New Section. If I right click on a section, I can rename the section, I can delete a section, I can merge sections together, and I can also change the section color. And I get a variety of colors here. So let's change this one to apple. And you can see now that's now a shade of green. Okay, so that's how you create sections. How do we add pages? Well, we have an Add Page button. So let's click on Add Page, and we're going to call this Page 2. If I go back to my first page, if you notice here, within all of my new sections, there is an untitled page. So I'm going to go back to this one and make this Page 1, just so you can see how things are laid out here. Okay, so this is one way that you can view your notes in OneNote. However, you'll notice above we have our toolbar. Now in the toolbar, there are different toolbars, as is common in Microsoft Office apps. We start off with Home. If I go to the View toolbar, I can change my layout of my OneNote view here from what's called vertical tabs. So we've got a vertical alignment here of sections to horizontal. Let's click on this. And this is the original view. If you ever used OneNote in the past, back in 5 years ago or more, this is what it kind of looked like. So again, we've got our notebook here. If I click where the notebook is, I can add more notebooks or open existing notebooks from here. I can see my sections across the top, and I can click on those sections like so, and the pages are listed on the right-hand side. It's not necessarily the most efficient interface, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the vertical layout, and we're going to stick with that for the purpose of our rest of our presentation today. Now, talking about the toolbar up here, this is the simplified toolbar. And if you prefer the older style of Microsoft toolbars, well, you can change this to what's called the classic one. So we're going to right click in your white space here, and I'm going to say use classic ribbon. And you'll notice here the buttons get a little bit bigger, the icons are a bit bigger, and the words are there. There's no extra features. This is exactly the same as the simplified. It's just probably, if you're used to some of the older Office apps, you may prefer this. So if I go back to Home, you'll see here there's a lot more in the way of formatting functionality and so on. It's just a bit more accessible. Okay, let's start typing some notes, shall we, and see actually what happens when we type a note. So I'm going to go into my test page 1, 2, 3 here. I've given it a title. I now just click below, and you'll see I've got a cursor there. So if I just type here. This is my note. So you'll see here I'm typing some text, and I can zoom in as well. If I use the control key on my keyboard and scroll, I can zoom in and out. If you're on a device with a touch screen, you can pinch and zoom in and out as well, which is quite useful. And the same applies on tablets as well. Now you notice when I started typing, I've got a box that's appeared around my text. Now this is called a note container. So I can now click somewhere else onto my page. Let's just go to the right here. Notes 2. I've now got another container, and I can drag that container to wherever I want it to be on the screen. So a possible use for this could be like mind mapping. You could use the containers here to position your notes in a way that helps you to organize thoughts or even priorities of things. You can't merge containers, but what you can do with containers, you can make them bigger. So as you see, if I move my mouse over the edge of it there, I can make the container wider, and I can make the container will get taller as I start adding more content into it as well. Now, while I'm typing, it's not just text I can type. I've got all the formatting options that I'm used to in Microsoft apps. So for example, I can bullet things. So let's start a bullet list here. List point 1, list point 2, and so on. I can indent, so I can bring points in, and I can outdent as well. So I can change the level of my bulleting or numeric bulleting as well. I can insert things. So let's click on the insert menu and see what we can put into our note. So you'll notice across the top here, I can add tables. They're very useful. So if I just click here, I can choose the size table I want. So if I want a 4x3 table, let's click there, and it will insert the table where your cursor is within that container. Now, again, you can grow the container, and as you add things into the table will auto resize, and you can control the width of columns with the adjuster there. We can also insert pictures. So let's go back to the insert menu, and I can insert here pictures, and I can choose picture from a file. If I'm on a laptop with a camera, I can insert from the camera. If I'm on a mobile device, I can obviously insert stuff from my photo library and also pull in content as well. So if we insert a picture from a file, I should get a dialog box pop up. Here we go. It wants me to browse for some pictures. So let's go into my pictures folder, and I'm just going to grab a logo. Here we go. So this is going to insert that picture from my OneDrive into the table because that's where my cursor was. Now I can cut that out of there. I'm going to press Control X, and I'm just going to add my cursor a bit further down and paste there, and there's my image. And I can resize the image as well, and I can drag that around as necessary. It doesn't have to be in this container. I can drag that or cut that and paste that into a different container on the page. Now, to help you out, there are some things called page templates. So on the insert menu here, you'll see page templates. And if I just drop into that, you'll see on the right-hand side here, we've got some categories of page templates. So if you're a business user, you might want a template to take minutes for a meeting, for example. Well, let's drop down business, and you'll see here we've got a project overview template, and then we've got simple meeting notes 1 and 2, informal meeting notes, personal meeting notes, detail meeting notes, formal meeting notes. Let's see what they look like. Let's add a page. So I've got a blank page now. I'm going to add simple meeting notes 1. Okay, so I've got a title. I would edit that. I've got a bit of a background here. I've got different containers here, the agenda points, the attendees, the action items. I may not like that. Let me just change that to simple meeting notes 2. So this lays it out slightly differently. And you'll notice adding it here actually as an additional page, so it doesn't overwrite any content that you may already have in your notebook there. So play with the templates. You may find some stuff in there that's really useful. Now we can also, if I go back to my original page here, where I was making a mess, we can insert links. Now what is a link? If I press on link here, what I can do, if I had a URL I wanted to provide a link to, so let's grab a URL. Let's go to, bring up a new tab here. I'm going to put a link to my website, pstechnology.co.uk. Okay, let me just grab that URL with my Control C and go back to my OneNote page here, insert the link, paste the address in here, text to display. Let's just make that link to PS Tech. Wasn't a good example. Apologies for that. Here we go. So I've now got a URL link. Now that's nothing new. But what I can also do, if I've got multiple sections and multiple pages, you'll notice when I press the link button here, I actually can pick a location in OneNote. So I can link to other locations within my OneNote notebook or other notebooks. So let's expand section 2. I'm going to put a link in here to untitled page, and the text to display is going to be, I don't know, project notes. And if I click OK, I've now got a link there, badly formatted. Let's see if we can put on a new line. Okay, we'll try that again. Link to page 1, page 1. Here we are. So I'm now linking here. If I now click on that link in the document, it takes me straight to that part of my document. Okay, so hopefully you got the point of that. Badly demonstrated. I know, I'm sorry. We can also insert loop components as well. We've got a video on loop. So if you want to add in any of these sort of paragraph boxes that you can create in Microsoft Loop, task lists, voting tables, and then share those around your business users or staff, then that's a fantastic feature as well. Just a couple of other things you can insert. These are really exciting. Transcribe. So if you've got an audio file, I don't know, you've recorded your own voice and you'd like to put that into text form, you can actually, if I click on transcribe here, you can upload an audio file, or you can record straight here in OneNote, and that audio will be then converted into text. There is a limit. You get 300 transcription minutes per month within this. Let me just close that to keep that looking nice and clean. Okay. And finally, you can also insert video. So you can record a video, or you can insert a pre-recorded video within your notes as well. Let me jump to another tab in OneNote called Draw. So we mentioned earlier how OneNote also works on devices like phones and tablets. So if you're using an iPad, for example, with a stylus, like an Apple Pencil, like I've got here, you can handwrite your notes on your tablet and have them appear here as handwritten automatically on your Windows or Mac device. And there's a clever function in here which will actually help you to convert what's called ink to text. So when it detects handwritten notes, it can convert that. Let me just demonstrate that very badly with the mouse here. So I'm going to click on the black pen and I'm going to type in the word hello, like so. And we've got the, if I now go back to select, you'll see here, this is now movable. So I can position this anywhere on the screen. The ink to text function has now lit up. So if I click on that, it's converted my handwriting into editable text. That's rather useful. So if you're taking notes in a meeting and you like to use handwritten notes, certainly that's one way you can convert your notes into written text. You can use a highlighter pen as well. You can insert various shapes that are available here in OneNote as well, and some other things you can do around that. Okay, so definitely recommend if trying OneNote out on your phone and syncing that with your device, and you'll find some exciting options around that. So this is all great. We can make notes. These are all my notes. No one else can see these. What if I want someone else to be able to see my notes? Well, you notice in the top right corner, there is a share button. So from here, I can share the entire notebook with somebody. So the John at Extreme Training, this entire notebook with all the sections and pages, I can share that. So if I click on that, I'll get an invite box pop up where I can invite users to my notebook. This is a familiar box. If you're used to sharing files from SharePoint or OneDrive, it's exactly the same. And in here, you just pop the person's email address. And if we share with Fred, for example, I can add a message and I can hit send. And there's some options as well. So if you click on the little button here, I can set whether Bob can view the notebook only or make changes to it, which could be quite useful. I can set an expiry on this share, so he can't get in there the next month, for example. Oh, and I can password protect it as well. So that's quite useful. You don't necessarily want to share this with anyone. You would always generally choose people you choose, and then the person has to validate their identity when they try to access the notebook with the sharing link. So that's quite useful. So you can certainly share here. You can copy a link to the notebook and place that into an email or a Teams message, or you can email the page as well. If you want to manage who you've shared with previously, there's the manage access option as well. Now I'm going to show you in a minute another way you can share your notebooks, which I think for internal use, you'll find a lot better. Okay. So if I just jump to the review tab, we talked about security briefly there. You'll see in here, there's a function here called password. You can password protect a page. So when a section, sorry. So when I click on the password function here, I can set a password for this section. So any pages that are within this section are password protected. Whoever's trying to access it can't get into those pages unless they know the password. Okay, it can't be linked to your biometric. It's a separate password that's within Microsoft OneNote. Now, OneNote integrates with some other apps. For example, Microsoft Outlook. So if I jump into Microsoft Outlook here, just allow this to open. I've got my inbox here. Let's just go into a meeting inside my calendar. So I've got a meeting earlier today at 10 o'clock. If I open that meeting up here, just this one. If I just change my toolbar to the classic ribbons, I hope this will make this a bit clearer for me. There is send to OneNote. Now, when I click on send to OneNote, let's do that now. I can share notes with this meeting occurrence, or let's just click on that, or I can take my own notes. Let's just click on this option here. And what will happen, I'm hoping, here we go. It's now going to ask me, where do you want to save these notes? So I'm going to save it in this notebook under John's notes. Let's click OK. Okay, and it puts a link into the meeting invite. So anybody else has got access to this notebook, if it was a shared notebook, would also be able to see the meeting notes. If I jump back to OneNote here and go to John's notes, you'll see here there is an extra page now that's been added, which has got key information about this meeting. So it records the participants, the invitation message that was in the original invite, the location, if it was in person or online, and then there's a section here called notes. So that link from the original meeting invite would take the user here and they'll be able to either view or collaborate on the notes from that meeting. Okay, you can also integrate OneNote with Microsoft Teams. There are other things you can do in Outlook as well, but in the interest of time, we're not going to cover those today. But we're going to look briefly here about how you can access OneNote from within Teams. So as an example here, if I open up Microsoft Teams, which is signed in already for me, typically you'll probably be in the chat section of Teams. We do have another video on YouTube about Microsoft Teams, but if I go from chat to Teams, you'll see here I have a number of teams that have been set up here. Now I could, for example, under the operations general channel here, I could create a notebook that is specific to the users who have access to this team and channel in Teams. The way I do that is I click the plus button and I get to add an app. So I'm going to add in here, if I search for OneNote, here we are, I click on that, and that is going to create, because it doesn't exist at the moment, it's going to create a notebook. So I choose where I want that to go. So I'm going to put that here in operations, and I'm going to click save. So we've now created a OneNote notebook under the operations SharePoint site, and done that via Microsoft Teams. Anyone else who's in that team will have access to this notebook automatically, and you'll be able to collaborate in here. So you've got if I click in this button here, we've got our sections and pages exactly as you just saw a moment ago. All right. So I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump to Microsoft SharePoint here. I had lots of other things to share with you. I'm going to go into SharePoint. So I'm going to go to the web just to tidy up the view here, and let's close my website. And within Microsoft 365 here from the home screen, I'm going to go to SharePoint. Okay. Now, when I click on SharePoint, I will be at the SharePoint landing page where I can then choose which site in SharePoint it is that I want to go to. So I'm going to, in this instance, going to go to the finance team site here. So when I click into here, this is the finance team SharePoint site. Now, every time you create a Microsoft 365 group or a SharePoint site, you will get this link down the left-hand side here, notebook. So you always get a blank OneNote notebook in every SharePoint site. You can remove it, but it can be very useful because the finance team have access to the SharePoint site. So the finance team would also possibly want to use their own OneNote file to share information and keep notes between them. So I've got a hypothetical page here that might appear in a finance notebook, a supplier list, for example. It's commonplace for businesses to have a list of suppliers and key compliance information about them. So this is very useful. This is all online in the web. Now, using the editing button here, what I can do is I can click open in desktop, because I might not like editing in the web. Sometimes it can be a bit clunky, can't it? So if I click open in desktop and then click open, give it permissions to do so, you'll see here in my desktop app of Microsoft OneNote that we now have the finance notebook now open within my OneNote. So if I just collapse these two notebooks here, I've now got two notebooks open at the same time. You can have as many notebooks as you want. And if you've got notebooks you've created in the past, you can add them very easily. You click on File, you click on open. And then any notebooks that you've worked on previously, so the most recent one we looked at was finance, because that's just where we've come from. I can also, it's at the top of the list there, but I can see some other ones as well. So if I click on project notes, I've now got 3 notebooks open. Now, when you open it for the first time, it takes a second while it synchronizes the content. Here's my different sections within this particular notebook, like so, and you'll see each section has got a number of pages here. So with content in already. So that basically means you can access all of your notebooks, whether they're in your own personal account, which in Microsoft 365 are stored in OneDrive, or whether they're offline on your device, or whether they're in SharePoint or Teams. You can have them all inside the OneNote app. The same applies on your mobile devices as well. Now, benefit of doing that is collaboration. So I've now got here the finance notebook open. If I click onto the suppliers tab and the suppliers list here, I'm logged in as John Smith. Now let's say I want to make some notes here. So I'm just going to type some garbage here onto the screen. You'll see the section is expanding. Now I'm going to sign in as another user in a different browser. So if I open up Chrome here, and I'm going to go to office.com, I'm hoping it stayed signed in for me. It has. So I'm now logged into this browser as Fred Jones. Now, if I, from here in my recent document list, because as Fred, I was here earlier preparing for this webinar, if I click on the finance notebook, it will take me straight to sharepoint.com and open this notebook for me. Now, what you'll notice here on the finance notebook is the notes I just added as John have automatically synchronized to this notebook and are here. So as Fred, I can now see the notes that John has just added. Now I'm going to add an extra note, say just a bit more garbage. It could be anything at all about a supplier. Here we are. And I'm just going to put above that actually, from Fred. Okay, so you can see that there on screen. Let's jump back to my OneNote app in Windows, which is signed in as John. And you'll see here that there's the stuff I typed as John, and highlighted in green here is the section I just typed from Fred. So in almost real time, you get synchronization of your notebook files and pages between users. But even better than that, you'll see it's highlighted it in a color, and you've got Fred's initials next to it. So if Fred was using the OneNote app, not the web version, but the desktop app like we're using here, he would have seen next to the notes added by John Smith here, the initials JS. So these are areas that are highlighted like this are like unread emails. So once you've caught up on your notes and you can see what people have added, if you're a bit, you like to make sure things are clean, on your keyboard you can press Control and Q, and that will mark that note as read. But you can still see Fred's initials here next to it. So that's a useful way to collaborate. You can both have notes open at the same time. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And what I would have liked to have shown you was some stuff in the home menu here around tags. Just super brief. You can tag content with all sorts of ideas here. You can have to-do lists. You can tag information. This is a contact. This is an idea. This is something for project X, Y, or Z. When you create tags, you can use the Find Tags button, and this will show you all tagged content across all of your notebooks. That will be for another webinar. We'll go into that in a bit more detail, and also the Outlook task button. Let me stop my screen share. I'm sure, like me, you're probably getting peckish. It's lunchtime. So I hope you found that informative. Go to the Start menu, open up Microsoft OneNote, get started typing notes, add them to your phone or tablet, and I think you'll find that is a real epic time saver. So look out in your inbox over the coming days for an email which will have the link to this recording, which will be on YouTube. Share that with your colleagues, and you can also find us on YouTube at PS Tech MSP. Also look out for the invite to next month's Lunch and Learn. We're going to look at some pro tips in Microsoft Word. And we've all been using Word probably for 20 years plus. There's some great features in there that most people don't scratch the surface on. So look out for that, and hopefully we'll add some value there for you as well. So I'd like to say to you all, thanks for joining. Take care. Enjoy the holiday break that's coming up in a few weeks' time, and we'll see you in 2025. Thanks very much.